Welcome to The Explainer. So we're kicking things off today with a story that is frankly gonna blow your mind, especially if you've ever felt like the world of high finance is some exclusive club meant only for math geniuses and Ivy League grads. This story about a man named Ronald Read is going to completely flip that script.
Okay, let's dive right into it. $8 million. Let that sink in for a second. That massive sum was the total savings of a man who passed away in 2014. And the absolutely craziest part? He didn't inherit a single dime of it. He didn't invent some groundbreaking tech startup in his garage, and he definitely didn't win the lottery.
Here is what's truly incredible about this. Ronald Read was a janitor. Yep, a totally humble, hardworking guy who simply saved a little bit consistently his entire life, and then just got out of the way to let the incredible power of compounding do its thing. It completely shatters the illusion that you need a fancy Harvard diploma or a high-stress Wall Street job to build massive wealth. What it proves is that behavioral discipline can easily beat out a prestigious financial background any day of the week.
It all boils down to a brilliant concept summarized by Morgan Housel in his book The Psychology of Money. He points out that financial success is not a hard science, it's a soft skill where how you behave is way more important than what you actually know. Building wealth isn't just about crunching complex math or perfectly timing the market, it is deeply, profoundly an emotional and psychological game. To help us master this soft skill, we're going to explore 5 key psychological traps and takeaways: the price of admission, the trap of envy, rationalizing the irrational, preparing for the unknown, and finally, the seduction of pessimism. Let's jump straight into number 1, the price of admission, and how visualizing market downturns in a brand new way changes absolutely everything. Picture this. You want a really nice, brand new watch to impress your friends. You walk into the store, and you basically have 2 options. You can either take out your card and pay for it, doing the right thing, or you can grab it, run out the door, and just hope you've done enough cardio to outrun mall security. Naturally, you're going to pay for it. You understand that something valuable comes with a price tag. Well, investing has a required price tag too, and you simply can't just steal the returns. And that's exactly what market volatility is. It's just a fee. It is not a fine for doing something wrong. It is literally the standard cost of admission for achieving high returns over the long term. If you want that premium watch, you pay the premium price. If you want the high returns, you have to be willing to stomach the terrifying drops. To really wrap our heads around that fee, let's look at a real-world example. Imagine you were heavily invested in Netflix back in 2011 because you correctly saw the bright future of streaming. You'd be incredibly wealthy today, right? But to get to today, you would have had to watch that stock plummet by 80% from its peak when they lost tons of customers that year. Think about the brutal emotional test of that. Imagine facing your family at the dinner table, quietly wondering if you just destroyed their financial future. That is the fee. And hey, it's not just risky individual tech stocks. Even if you played it totally safe with a standard S&P 500 index fund starting in 1980, you'd still have had to sit through a combined 13 years where your portfolio was down 20%. And about 8 terrifying months where it was down 50%. This is the proof. You have to look at volatility as the necessary price you pay for a brighter financial future, not as some kind of punishment. Moving on to our second point, the trap of envy and the absolute danger of social comparison. Because while capitalism is amazing at generating massive wealth, it is equally ruthless at generating massive envy. Think about this endless ladder of wealth. Say you're a highly specialized doctor making $500,000 a year. You feel on top of the world. Until you buy a vacation home and realize your new neighbor is a CEO making $10 million a year. But wait, that CEO is childhood friends with Michael Jordan, who is worth $2 billion. And then Michael Jordan goes to a charity gala with Jeff Bezos, who recently jumped his net worth by $75 billion in a single year to sit around $200 billion. The point is, no matter how high you climb, there's always a bigger fish. It makes social comparison an endless, absolutely miserable game to play. And trying to constantly surpass your peers, it isn't just mentally draining. It is financially lethal. Throughout history, this dark side of envy has caused people to make the most foolish, catastrophic choices imaginable. We've seen people leverage their portfolios to the absolute teeth just to move up one social tier, only to lose everything. They've acted on insider information, ruined their reputations, gone to jail, and even forsaken their own families, all because they just couldn't accept that they already had enough. Which brings us to takeaway number 3, rationalizing the irrational. Because it turns out that what seems totally crazy to you might actually make absolute sense to someone else. Okay, consider this wild paradox. The lowest income households in the US spend about $400 a year on lottery tickets.
But at the exact same time, a third of Americans couldn't even come up with $400 for an emergency. From the outside looking in, blowing your emergency fund on scratch-offs seems completely insane. But it kind of makes sense when you step into their shoes. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, unable to afford a vacation, a new car, or college for your kids, a lottery ticket is often the one and only way to buy a sliver of the financial dream that you might already be living.
Acknowledging these wildly different perspectives is basically a superpower for your own money. It stops you from blindly copying what some billionaire is doing. Because let's be real, a billionaire is focused on staying rich, while you might be focused on getting rich. Two totally different games. It helps you stick to your own unique risk profile and your circle of competence. It's the exact reason why you can calmly ignore a wild trading mania like GameStop if you aren't a day trader. You realize, hey, that's just not my game to play.
All right, number 4, preparing for the unknown, otherwise known as the Black Swan effect. Think about monumental, society-altering events like the Great Depression, World War II, or the recent global pandemic. What is the one thing they all share? They were virtually impossible to foresee.
The brilliant author Nassim Taleb calls these events black swans. They are unpredictable outliers, they carry extreme, world-shifting impacts, and, this is the kicker, human nature fools us into falsely believing we could have foreseen them, but only after they've already happened. We basically trick ourselves into thinking the world makes perfect sense.
And because we fall for this illusion, people constantly try to predict disasters and time the market. But trying to time disasters is a mathematical nightmare. Just look at the numbers. If you invested in the S&P 500 over a 20-year period, your return would be about 291%. But if you try to jump in and out to avoid crashes and you miss just the 4 best-performing stock market days in those 2 decades, your return slashes dramatically to just 164%. You literally have to prepare your finances to survive disasters rather than arrogantly trying to predict them.
Finally, our 5th point, the seduction of pessimism. Have you ever noticed how pessimism always sounds incredibly intelligent and realistic, while optimism almost always sounds totally naive?
Well, as Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman points out, our asymmetry toward loss is literally an evolutionary survival trait hardwired deeply into our brains. Think about it. If an ancient human ignored a beautiful optimistic sunset, nothing happened. But if they ignored a rustling bush, they got eaten by a tiger. Organisms that treat threats as more urgent than opportunities just have a better chance to survive and pass on their genes.
And on top of our biology, there's a weird asymmetry in time. Setbacks and tragedies happen practically overnight. Boom, a stock market crash, a natural disaster, a sudden pandemic. Because they happen so fast, they create intriguing, dramatic stories that completely dominate the news cycle. Progress, on the other hand, creeps up on us. Optimistic trends like rising global life expectancy, cheaper sustainable energy, or compounding interest, they unfold way too slowly to ever grab a headline. The takeaway here? Don't let the loud, fast drama of pessimism seduce you out of participating in the slow, quiet march of progress.
So, to wrap things up today, enough is enough. Remember that the stock market demands the psychological fee of volatility. To build true wealth, like our janitor friend Ronald Reed, you don't need a Wall Street pedigree. You simply need to master your own behavioral traps. Actively ignore the urge to compare yourself to others, and prepare for a future you absolutely cannot predict.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to really chew on before you make your next financial move. Ask yourself, are you risking what you already have and what you actually need for something that you don't have and ultimately don't even need? Think very carefully about what enough means to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep building that soft skill of wealth.